Keanu Reeves stepped into the opulent restaurant in the heart of the city, his presence almost unassuming amidst the grandeur. Dressed in worn jeans, a simple shirt, and a jacket that bore no designer label, he moved with quiet confidence. The soft glow of crystal chandeliers bathed the space in golden light, reflecting off polished silverware and pristine tablecloths. He chose a discreet table near the corner, hoping to enjoy a peaceful meal, but before he could even glance at the menu, a waitress approached. Carol, one of Lumiere's most experienced servers, carried herself with an air of superiority. Her posture was rigid, her expression unreadable, until she took a closer look at him. "Are you sure you can afford to be here?" she asked, her voice laced with mockery. A smirk tugged at the corner of her lips as she let out a short, sarcastic chuckle, just loud enough for nearby patrons to hear. A few turned their heads, curiosity flickering in their eyes. What happened next left everyone in the restaurant speechless and revealed a truth that changed everything. Before we continue this story, let us know where you're watching from. If you love gripping stories like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow at 12:30 p.m., we have another incredible story just for you. Lumiere wasn't just a restaurant, it was a statement of luxury in Beverly Hills. Located on one of the city's most prestigious avenues, its towering glass windows overlooked a boulevard adorned with neon lights and slow-cruising sports cars. Every detail inside was meticulously designed to impress. This was where the elite dined, where reservations were exclusive, and where status was everything. Carol took immense pride in working at Lumiere. To her, being a waitress at such an establishment wasn't just a job, it was a privilege, a badge of honor she never failed to mention in conversations. But with her pride came a sharp sense of judgment. She had perfected the art of categorizing customers at a glance. Their clothes, their posture, the way they spoke, these were all clues that determined whether they belonged. And to her, some people simply didn't. When the restaurant's glass doors swung open that evening and Keanu Reeves walked in, he was an anomaly. He didn't exude the extravagance that was expected here. There was no expensive watch on his wrist, no designer suit, no telltale signs of wealth. Just quiet confidence. Carol, standing at the reception desk discussing a VIP reservation, paused mid-sentence when she saw him. Her eyes narrowed, her brows furrowed ever so slightly. She tilted her head, scrutinizing him without the slightest attempt to hide her skepticism. "Good evening," she said, forcing a smile that barely lasted a second. "How can I help you?" Keanu's voice was calm, polite. "I'd like a table." Carol's expression faltered. A flicker of disbelief crossed her face as if he had just uttered something absurd. She raised an eyebrow, her arms folding over her chest. "Are you sure?" she asked, her tone carrying an edge. "This is a very exclusive restaurant." Keanu remained unfazed, his demeanor unchanged. He met her gaze with quiet certainty. "Yes, I'm sure." Carol studied him again, searching for any sign that he might be joking. But before she could say another word, something happened, something that no one in the restaurant expected. A secret was about to be revealed, and by the time the night was over, Carol's world would never be the same. Carol let out a short, incredulous laugh, shaking her head. "Okay, just a moment. I need to check something." Without bothering to hide her skepticism, she turned abruptly and walked toward the reception office. Sitting down at the computer, she typed his name into the reservation system with exaggerated flair, as if expecting the result to be obvious. When nothing appeared, she smirked to herself, rolling her eyes. Returning to the dining area, she made no attempt to mask her irritation. "Well, as I suspected, you don't have a reservation," she said, her voice thick with sarcasm. "We do have a few tables available, but just so you know, this isn't a casual dining spot." Keanu remained composed, unaffected by her condescending tone. "I'd still like to dine here," he replied, his voice calm and unwavering. Carol sighed dramatically, reaching for a menu with a sharp, dismissive motion. "Fine, but I'll need to seat you in an appropriate area. Follow me." Without checking if he was keeping up, she walked briskly through the restaurant, weaving between tables of elegantly dressed patrons. Instead of leading him to the grand central dining area, where crystal chandeliers cast golden light over the tables. She guided him to the farthest, most unappealing corner. The table sat near the kitchen, where the clatter of dishes and the muffled voices of the staff created a stark contrast to the refined ambience of the main dining room. Carol unceremoniously dropped the menu onto the table with an audible thud. "Here you go," she said, her tone falsely sweet. "This should be perfect for you. For private." Keanu glanced at the table and then back at Carol, his slight smile never fading. "Thank you," he said evenly. Carol crossed her arms, tilting her head, trying to decipher whether he was being sarcastic or simply oblivious. "You're welcome," she said, her voice laced with mockery. "Just so you know, we typically reserve this area for special cases. But since we're not fully booked tonight, you're in luck." Spinning on her heels, she walked away before he could respond. As she passed a nearby couple, she muttered under her breath, loud enough for them to hear, "He won't last 5 minutes. Bet he leaves as soon as he sees the menu." But Keanu, unfazed, casually opened the menu and began scanning the options, taking his time. The elegant melody of the pianist filled the air, and he absorbed the ambience as if Carol's hostility didn't exist. Minutes later, Carol returned to take his order. She pulled out her notepad with an exaggerated flick of her wrist, her expression unreadable but her annoyance still evident. "Have you decided?" she asked flatly. "Or would you like a recommendation?" Keanu looked over the menu once more before pointing to one of the most expensive dishes. "I'd like to try this one." Carol arched an eyebrow, her lips curling slightly as she glanced at the selection. Then, as if holding back laughter, she covered her mouth with one hand. "Oh, of course, the filet de Rossini," she said, her tone drenched in condescension. "A bold choice." She tapped the notepad with her pen, tilting her head mockingly. "Just to clarify, sir, you do know this dish costs $350, right?" Keanu nodded, unfazed. "Yes, it sounds wonderful." Carol's smirk widened. She tapped her nails against the menu, as if giving him one last chance to reconsider. "I'd suggest double-checking the prices," she said with a falsely concerned tone. "We wouldn't want any unpleasant surprises later." Keanu met her gaze with quiet certainty. "I'm sure." Her amusement faltered slightly. His confidence was irritating. With an exaggerated sigh, she scribbled down the order. "As you wish," she said. "But just a warning, our chef prefers this dish to be enjoyed by those who truly appreciate fine dining. I hope it meets your expectations." She turned to leave but hesitated, glancing back over her shoulder. "Oh, and one more thing, the minimum expected tip here is 20%. Keep that in mind while you enjoy." Keanu remained composed. As he waited, he admired the restaurant's luxurious decor, the twinkling chandeliers, and the pianist's graceful performance. If Carol had hoped to make him uncomfortable, she was failing miserably. Little did she know, the real surprise was yet to come. When the appetizer arrives, Carol sets the plate down forcefully, causing it to slide slightly across the table. "Here's your appetizer. I hope you enjoy it, or at least know what you're eating," she says with a mocking smile. Keanu thanks her politely. "Thank you." Carol leans in slightly as if trying to provoke a reaction. "You know, a lot of customers who order this dish end up not liking it. It's not exactly mainstream, but I think you'll do just fine." Good luck." Keanu looks at her with the same calm expression as always. "It looks excellent. Thank you for your attention." Frustrated that she can't elicit any negative reaction from him, Carol walks away, quickly muttering something to a coworker. "That guy won't even make it to the main course. He's going to ask for the check as soon as he sees the bill." Meanwhile, Keanu continues to eat his appetizer leisurely across the dining room. Carol watches from a distance, her arms crossed. A malicious smile spreads across her face as she notices that he seems distracted. "I bet he's going to ask for tap. What are these types always do?" she comments to another staff member who visibly ignores her. Uncomfortable, however, the elderly customer at a nearby table continues to observe. He raises his wine glass and silently toasts in Keanu's direction, who responds with a slight nod and a smile. Dinner is only just beginning, but Carol's growing disdain won't go unnoticed for much longer. After taking Keanu's order, Carol decided to teach a lesson to the customer she believed had no right to be there. Instead of promptly taking the order to the kitchen, she made a point of prioritizing the patrons she deemed more important. She stopped to chat with an elegant couple in the center of the dining room, laughed exaggeratedly at a joke told by another guest, and even delivered a cocktail to a table that wasn't hers. Meanwhile, time passed, and Keanu continued to wait patiently in an attempt to provoke him further. Carol repeatedly walked past his table, pretending to be busy every time he glanced in her direction. She averted her eyes and quickened her steps as if she were too occupied to attend to him. After a long wait, Keanu was approached by one of the patrons who had been observing Carol's behavior. The elderly man with neatly combed white hair and dressed in a navy blue suit approached with a kind smile. "Good evening, young man. I hope you don't mind me interrupting, but I've noticed that you've been overlooked," he said, his tone polite yet firm. Keanu smiled back calmly. "Good evening, don't worry, it's all fine." The elderly man chuckled softly and leaned in to speak more quietly. "You know, sometimes being treated like this is a test of our patience, but I can say with certainty that maintaining your composure is a great sign of strength." Before Keanu could reply, Carol suddenly appeared, interrupting the conversation. "Sir, can I help you with something?" she asked the elderly man, her voice more polished than usual but with a subtly authoritative tone. "I wouldn't want you to disturb our customer." The elderly man narrowed his eyes at her, but maintained his composure. "Don't worry, miss, I was just greeting this gentleman here. It's rare to find someone so serene." Carol let out an exaggerated sigh and gestured toward the man's table. "Well, perhaps you should return to your table and enjoy your dinner," she said, clearly impatient. Keanu simply observed the interaction, his expression calm yet analytical. "Thank you for coming over," he said to the elderly man with a slight nod. "It was a pleasure speaking with you." The man nodded and returned to his table, but not before casting one last look of disapproval at Carol, who appeared entirely indifferent. When Carol finally decided to bring Keanu's main course, she made sure to take longer than necessary. First, she stopped in the kitchen to chat with the chefs, leaving the dish sitting under the warming lamp. Then she returned to the dining room to attend another table, completely ignoring the ready plate. When she finally brought the dish out, she placed it on Keanu's table with a brusque gesture. "Here's your order. I hope you enjoy it," she said, her tone dripping with irony. "Oh, and if you don't like it, please let us know. We can always adjust to something more affordable." Keanu thanked her with the same calm demeanor as before. "It looks excellent, thank you." Carol gave a cynical smile and leaned in slightly, lowering her voice just enough for him to hear clearly. "Are you sure? It's a very sophisticated dish. It might be difficult for someone who's not used to it." "I'm sure," Ku replied serenely. "Thank you for your concern." Frustrated that she couldn't elicit any negative reaction from him, Carol walked away quickly. At the bar, Carol commented to a coworker who was unsuccessfully trying to ignore her remarks, "He's pretending to be polite, but it's obvious he's uncomfortable," she said with a laugh, placing an empty glass on the counter. "I bet he doesn't even know what he's eating." It's always the same with these types. They come here to feel important but end up making fools of themselves. Her coworker forced a smile, visibly uncomfortable. "Maybe he just wants to have dinner, Carol. Maybe we should treat him like any other customer." She stared at him, incredulous. "Like any other customer? Did you see the boots he's wearing? He doesn't belong here, and frankly, if he can't handle it." The room remained silent, the weight of Keanu's words lingering in the air. The staff stood motionless, their expressions shifting from guilt to deep contemplation. Even those who hadn't directly participated in Carol's behavior now felt the gravity of the situation. The quiet murmurs of self-reflection rippled through the team. Keanu let the moment settle before speaking again, his voice steady but carrying undeniable authority. "Respect is not a privilege. It's a basic human right. This restaurant was never meant to be about exclusivity, it's about excellence. And excellence is not just in the food we serve, but in the way we treat people." His words resonated deeply, reaching every individual in the room. He let his gaze settle on Carol, whose face was pale, her hands clenched at her sides. She shifted uncomfortably under his scrutiny, her earlier defiance now replaced by something much smaller, shame, perhaps, or regret. Keanu continued, his voice softer but no less powerful. "Carol," he said, "this isn't about punishing you. It's about understanding. We all make mistakes. But what matters is what we do next. You have a choice: continue justifying your actions or learn from them." Carol swallowed hard, her lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. She looked down, nodding almost imperceptibly. The manager, standing beside Keanu, cleared his throat. "From this moment on, we need to do better. We will do better. If we want this restaurant to thrive, We must be a place where people feel welcome, not judged. A murmur of agreement passed through the staff. Some exchanged glances, while others looked at the ground, their thoughts undoubtedly turning inward. Keanu took a slow breath before addressing them one final time. It's easy to make assumptions based on appearances, but in doing so, we close ourselves off from understanding people. When you choose kindness, when you choose to look beyond the surface, you allow something bigger to happen. You create a space where people feel seen. The weight of his words settled over them, filling the empty restaurant with a quiet introspection. No one spoke. No one moved. The manager straightened, nodding firmly. Meeting dismissed. Take some time to reflect on what's been said. We'll reconvene tomorrow. The staff slowly began to disperse, whispering among themselves. Some left quickly, while others lingered, lost in their own thoughts. Carol hesitated before stepping forward. "Mr. Reeves," she began, her voice uncertain. Keanu paused, turning to face her. His expression was unreadable, yet not unkind. She exhaled shakily. "I was wrong. I see that now. I'm sorry." A long silence followed. Then Keanu gave a slight nod. "Then show it." Carol nodded, understanding. And with that, Keanu Reeves turned and walked toward the exit, his presence leaving a lasting imprint. The lesson had been given. What happened next was up to them. Keanu took a slow breath, his eyes scanning the faces before him. Some staff members looked deeply moved, while others were lost in quiet thought. The weight of his words had settled over them, reshaping their perspectives in ways they hadn't expected. Carol swallowed hard, wiping away the last of her tears. "I never thought about it that way before," she admitted, her voice laced with genuine regret. "I was so focused on appearances, on making sure everything looked perfect, that I forgot the most important thing: people. I judged without thinking, without understanding." She looked up, meeting Keanu's gaze. "I promise, Mr. Reeves, I'll change." Keanu studied her for a moment before giving a small, encouraging nod. "That promise isn't for me, Carol. It's for yourself. Real change happens when you choose it, not when it's expected of you." She nodded slowly, taking in his words. A few of the other staff members exchanged glances, as if silently resolving to carry this lesson forward as well. The manager cleared his throat, his expression both humbled and determined. "Mr. Reeves, I can't thank you enough. Your message was clear. We'll make sure Lumiere reflects the values you built it upon." Keanu gave a gentle smile. "It's not just about Lumiere. It's about how we treat people everywhere. Kindness isn't about grand gestures. It's in the small choices we make every day. It's about seeing people for who they are, not just for how they appear." The room remained still, his words settling deeply into the hearts of those listening. Keanu took one last look around before turning toward the exit. As he stepped outside, the cool evening air greeted him. The streets of Beverly Hills shimmered under the glow of streetlights, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. He paused briefly, glancing back at Lumiere's entrance. A soft smile crossed his lips. What had transpired that night wasn't just about a restaurant or a mistreated customer. It was about something bigger. It was about the kind of world we choose to create, about ensuring that every person feels seen, heard, and valued. As he walked down the illuminated street, Keanu reflected on his own words, hoping that the lesson would stay with those who had heard it. If there was one thought he wanted them to take away, it was this: in a world where you can be anything, choose to be kind. True strength is found not in judgment, but in acceptance. And remember, it's in the small choices we make every day that we shape not only the world around us but also who we are as human beings. If this story resonated with you, there are many more that will warm your heart. Click the screen to explore more tales of hope,